Hello, everybody. Welcome. Please take a seat for this session devoted to young people with an evocative title, Our Future or No Future. This session is coordinated by Stéphane CARCILLO, member of Le Cercle des Économistes, in charge of employment and revenue and income. You're an affiliated professor at the economics department at the Political Science Institute. We've also have we were supposed to have Phyllis Barca, who will be replaced by my neighbor, Saïd Amouche, a social entrepreneur. You are also the founder of the group Mosaic RH, around a foundation for inserting and mobilizing in favor of an economic inclusion policy. We also have, directly from abroad, Shirmai, who's a member of the group for commitment of young people for going beyond the climate, Pascal, co-founder and director general of Wavestone. And we also have the pleasure of Allan, who's an aerospace engineer at NASA at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the research center on aerospace missions. And we're very happy to have Alana with us to outline the debate. So young people, between our future or no future, the least thing we can say is that the portrait of young people today is highly contrasting. Yes, Isabelle, young people today, it's not just a single portrait. It's we're talking about a youth that's highly divided. If I were to simplify things, I would say that there are two types of youth. You've got those who obtain a diploma, a qualifying diploma, and those who don't manage to obtain a diploma. And that's very structuring when it comes to their prospects. Not only when it comes to the labour market, but also when it comes to what they think about their commitment, what their vision of the world is. So it's a subject that is economic, social, but also political. Now, the situation of young people, if I just take the averages into account, has improved over the past few years. This has to be said. 10 years ago or so, in France, 17% of young people were NEETs, neither in employment or education or training. These are young people who are no longer at school, they're not being trained, and they don't have a job. So it's one young person out of 8, yes. It was 1 out of 7, but we've made improvements. So we've gone up down to 13.5% from 17%, and that's thanks to a certain number of reforms. We've reformed learning, but we've also created platforms so that we stop people from dropping out. There's the youth guarantee, there's the commitment guarantee. We're reforming vocational training centres for young people, technical colleges. Lots of reforms are taking place that aim to reduce the percentage of NEETs. But in spite of everything in France, we've got almost 100,000 young people who drop out of the school system without a diploma. Before, it was between 130 and 180. But it's disastrous for these young people. It has a direct consequence on their prospects. And of course, the situation of the labour market is very difficult for them. And added to that difficulty, there's the difficulty of housing. We know that access to housing is difficult. We've talked about it already. We talk about it regularly at the meeting here in Aix. It's very complicated to be able to find housing and to move around in areas where there are problems. So young people who are not in an educational centre or a sports centre or any kind of centre are completely disengaged. They're very much isolated, and the prospects that are open to them are therefore highly limited. Now, if we take young people who manage to get a diploma, life is not as rosy as all of that. Yes, even when you have lots of diplomas, access to housing can be very complicated. Access to a stable job is not that easy either. You might have a stable job, but you navigate between different forms of instability. Even if young people like to move around and try and test different things and then make adjustments, you know, young people like to move around because they're seeking their path in housing and employment. And young people who are they suffer from insecurity, the perception that the world is going to collapse, and you know it's very demotivating. It's very difficult for them to invest in projects and to invest in companies that have long-term objectives. So these are the questions that we're asking today. What are the obstacles that are preventing young people from accessing a job or qualifying diplomas? You know, how do we find that motivation for them so that they you know, get their diplomas? What are the obstacles, and what policies might be developed or strengthened so that they can get back on track and find a motivating profession? How can we improve their representation in political institutions, but also in companies? And how can we manage eco-anxiety? There are many people suffer from this. So these are some of the questions that we can talk about. I imagine that there are others. Thank you very much, Stéphane. We're going to continue with you, Pascal IMBERT. So you are the general manager of Wavestone, and you will say that it's not easy to be 20 today in 2024. What do you mean by this? Well, there are 4 reasons, at least. I'd like to echo what's just been said. The first reason is that there's this sense of injustice among young people. Every year they come to Wavestone, we recruit several hundred a year, and this sense of injustice faced with climate change is something that destroys their trust in society, in the future. And then there's another feeling that weighs down on young people, and that is the fact that the social ladder works in our country, but not as well as in other OECD countries. It certainly doesn't work as well as it did for my generation and previous generations, so pre-millennial generations. No, not that I'm that young. Anyway, the third feeling, the third reason that creates this anxiety is the world around us, which is becoming more and more fragmented and polarized. Globally, we're seeing blocs that are coming into conflicting. We're seeing an increasing amount of polarization, and there's a sense of future conflicts. And so this is weighing down on younger generations. And then the last reason, which is undermining their confidence, is, you know, what they can use to help with this, and that is politics. It doesn't seem to be working, and this is especially true in France, given the current period where we've been seeing a show which is undignified, I would say. We have the feeling that, you know, that politicians have abandoned people, that we can't rise to the challenges because of what politicians are doing. So you've invited me to this panel discussion as a non-young person, so that I can maybe repent, but I will not be repenting. Well, I didn't do that. But anyway, for young people who are on the panel, I'm sorry. You know, we've tried, especially the generation of my generation of entrepreneurs, we've tried, but I think that the results is not in line with expectations. So, Shirmai, you'll talk to us about your experience. You're a member of the Commission for the Climate, but, you know, the path that you have followed has not always been easy, has it?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today. I apologize that I do not speak French at all, as I come from Hong Kong. But as mentioned, I am now as a youth member of what is called the Climate Overshoot Commission, and my journey to be part of the commission is not what people would deem as ordinary. So I'm very proud as my identity as a first-generation low-income student, which means that I am the first generation in my family to attend college, and I am from a low-income background. And because my parents never even finished high school, I have always found myself to be very difficult to be entering these multilateral spaces, to be empowered enough to have a voice to influence political decisions. But I was also being given a lot of privilege and had people that believed in me, had great mentors, and had institutions that were able to give me generous scholarships to first pursue my undergraduate degree in the United States and also now in Berlin, Germany. And so to talk a little bit about my work with the commission and how I was selected, I actually had gone through an internal recruitment process where my institution, the Hertie School, which is a public policy institution based in Berlin, they were able to nominate people to be part of this commission. And I didn't even thought of applying at first. I didn't feel like I was qualified enough, frankly. But I had a faculty member that believed in me enough and asked me if I would be interested. And subsequently, I got nominated and I was part of the commission. And because the commission is also a partner of the Paris Peace Forum, I was able to speak for the first time at a multilateral forum. And from there, I was spotted by one of the staff members of the conference today, and this is why I am here today. But I am very cognizant of the fact that a lot of these opportunities have come by me because I was in the right place in the right time, had a lot of privileges, and a lot of peers that come from similar backgrounds such as mine do not have these same opportunities. And so I wouldn't be here today, essentially, if I haven't been dealt with all these privileges.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Et bravo, bravo, vraiment.
And well done. So we're going to continue with you, Allan. You're an aerospace engineer. You work for NASA, the space agency in America. You grew up in Saint-Saint-Denis with a father who is a technician working in the IT sector, mother who worked in catering in a nursery school, and you were noticed by the highest of authorities. So your path is quite extraordinary. Tell us about it. Today you live in Los Angeles. You have an incredible life. You took part on the 9th of... You will be taking part in the launch on the 9th of July. Tell us about your path. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. So my name is Allan, I'm 24, and as has been said, I work at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Los Angeles. So it's a dream come true for me for several years, especially at the primary school. When I met up with the spatial field, I wanted to make it my job field. I wanted to work at NASA. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm lucky that I have had obstacles along the path. And that's why we've heard about it in this country. And you're being modest, because we did talk a lot about it. No, I'm happy because it's a great message that's been passed on for to suburbs, but also not just to the suburbs in France. So I did a 2-year engineering diploma at Paris-Nanterre. Then I joined an engineering school focusing on aerospace in partnership with the National Conservatory for Arts and Professions. Then I went to work for Ariane on the spatial program for the new European rocket, Ariane 6, which is going to be launched on Tuesday from the Space Center in Kourou. And you'll be there, won't you? Yes, I'll be there. I'll be leaving on Sunday to take part in the launch. And I think it will be great. I think I'll probably cry. So, yes, I'm very happy to fulfill my dream today. And I'm very grateful to my family, to my professors, my teachers who've helped me with this quest. So your message is to say, you know, you can fulfill your dreams. You mustn't think that you're limited. Maybe you don't need to go to Centrale or Polytechnique. There are other universities, other schools that you can go to. Is that the message you want to share? Yes, that's right. I take my time to talk to pupils, even remotely from Los Angeles. I tell them not to limit themselves. You have to just try. You've just got to try. Because if you don't try, then you can be 100% sure that you won't manage. But if you do try, maybe there will be something, a bit of luck, or obviously you have to work hard, but you know, you can go further than you think sometimes. And you mustn't prevent yourself from aiming high. In Seine-Saint-Denis, you know, I felt that around me it was difficult to aim for something high. You know, people said, you know, I'm from this neighborhood, it's going to be difficult for me. So if you do aim high, if you are motivated, you can get there. So well done. Thank you. So you were always encouraged, or did some people say you won't manage to do what you want to do? Well, there were teachers at school who said, well, as of secondary school, I said to my teachers, I want to work at NASA. And so sometimes, you know, I don't have any grudge towards those teachers who said, no, you won't be able to do that. There are very few people who are French who go and work for NASA. It's a very selective profession. I listened to them and I started my studies in company management, nothing to do with the space industry, but I've had this passion since I was little. I wanted to change. I wanted to redirect my life. And so the worst thing is to live with a regret and to say to yourself, I should have. So now I'm fulfilling my dream. So I have no grudge towards those teachers. They weren't doing that because they were malicious. That's their role sometimes, to guide pupils. They don't do it maliciously. But I'm happy because I've managed to fulfill my dream anyway today. Thank you very much for that. So, Saïda, what can you tell us with respect to the state of youth in difficult neighborhoods? Often they're not seen, they're not identified by recruiters. Stéphane was saying in his introduction that it's difficult for young people to find work, whatever the level of qualification they have, and it's even more difficult when they don't have any.
Yes, absolutely. When we talk about young people, there are different categories of young people. So here we just mentioned with Allan a particular type of particular category. These are the young ones who live in the poorest areas of France. So there's about 1,400 areas, cities, towns, part of the cities that fall into this category. It represents 5.4 million of people in France. It's quite a big number. It's 40% of the French population that is under 25, of the under 25. So today there's a challenge, there's a demographic challenge, but there's also a challenge with the talents. We have resources, and it's really good to have managed to have a dynamic population. There is such a population in poor countries, but at the same time, you have to know that they have less public financing than others. We have a preconceived idea that is or belief that is not true, because the city's policies today, they have a huge gap in terms of social justice, education. So we have policies by the state that are financed 145 euros per inhabitant per year, versus the average is at 270. So I would like to draw your attention to that. That means that we're very resilient. This used youth is very resilient because they have developed a capacity in Saint-Denis, the neighborhood where I come from. We have Kylian Mbappé who represents football. Now we can upload Allan after Kylian Mbappé. Now he's going to represent France from Saint-Denis at the NASA. So that means that we have solutions, we have a capacity to do things, and we shouldn't become a bit negative and saying we put too much money in the city's policies. It's not true. We don't have enough solutions in terms of security. That is true. We need to address that. But the suburbs suffer as much from security issues than others. The mothers who live in these neighborhoods, you have to remember that if you look at the active population, we have maybe 73% of women, of single parents, 72% of single families in France. So this is another phenomenon that aggravates poverty. And of course, at some point, we have stuff to do on this population. And I think we need to keep up our hopes, because if we could reinvent our public policies, particularly by putting in place inclusion policies, we have people who don't need to be helped. They don't need to be supported. They just need to be connected, particularly with the economic world, because that's where they're gonna be supported. They're gonna have access to employment offers, to jobs, and become fully integrated in society. Thank you very much. We're going to continue with the solutions that we can put in place. Shirmai CHUNG, what do you think we should be doing? How to help the young people and help them to be better represented and to participate into the political institutions? That's a very important point.
Translator is not working. Do you mind repeating the question in English?
So it's very important to include people in political institutions. Sorry.
Yes, so reflecting on my experiences, I realized that a lot of the opportunities that I have now has been a result of my privilege, and again, as I mentioned, people who believed in me. So first of all, I believe mentorship is very important, whether it be mentorship schemes or even just day-to-day conversations with youth. As Allan mentioned earlier, there were people along his way that didn't believe in him, but he didn't let that deter him. But I'm the opposite, and I've had experiences where I let those words affect me. And had it not been for my faculty member that believed in me enough to encourage me to apply, I wouldn't be here today. So first, yes, mentorship is very important. But also second, I believe that there should be an emphasis on including new rather than existing youth voices to have a seat on the table, to talk and to be engaged in these multilateral processes. So when I first joined the commission, I realized that a lot of my other youth advisors and members, they all have existing international political engagement experiences, and I was the odd one out, kind of. And so because of that, and as I enter these international forums, I realize that it's always the same people that I see again and again, no matter the location of these conferences. So I think there is something that needs to be done with how youth is being recruited and incorporated in these platforms. And also, third, I strongly believe that young people youth inclusion should not stop at access, but the engagement processes should not be just, giving youth an advisory title or letting them become a short-term consultant or to have them a one-time opportunity to speak at panels like these. I believe that today's panel is just a conversation starter, but what's next? How can you include me as part of your processes? How can you include my perspective in your decision-making? I think that is important.
Okay, thank you very much. Saïd, je pense que vous êtes d'accord justement avec ce que vient de nous dire.
I think you agree with what Shirmai said, that we need to include the young better in all kinds of political representations, that they are more present. Yes, it has a double consequence. First of all, you need to give. You want to motivate young people to get mobilized who have beautiful values such as meritocracy, but we have to make sure that it's integrated in concrete actions. We have a censorship tendency because we can't really project ourselves in the future. We need to work on that. And there's a survey that came out with Sanofi a few weeks ago that showed the level of censorship that young people have. They tend to censor themselves. There's so many levers to activate. When the government decided to launch the plan called One Young Person, One Solution, it was about 2 years ago, we saw a really quick transformation in the employment rate. We never had such a high employment rate. So if we put money in the right place, we can get people on board. But its policy was very general. It was just aimed at all the youth in general, but it was not specific. So if you look at the Treasury, when they assess this plan, it means that, yes, we had a very high employment rate, but the impact on the poorest regions of France, which I was mentioning, that is very, very low. The unemployment rate on those particular underprivileged areas, the employment rate didn't really pick up. So that means that we didn't manage to stimulate the youth that lives in those poor areas, and that gets a bit discouraged, and that we need to motivate. And we have with them, we have to do things such as mentoring and to reconnect the youth to actors, economical actors. It's very important, but we need those policies to be sustainable over time. And also, we're kind of going between one project to the next, and the project stops being financed anymore. We go up and down, and it creates a lot of instability, and it doesn't help the young people. So we're being mobilized. For the creation of a very specific structure. We revamped our unemployment agency. We renamed it. We called it now France Travail, France at Work. We need to revamp the concept at some point on how we finance and how much we compensate the people, the unemployed people. But if we don't create on this side, if France Travail does not develop an armed force within itself, which is called France Inclusion, to include really these people, we won't have the right answers on specific issues of particular. We're talking about single parent family. We're talking about trainings. If we really focus on a particular theme, it tends to work better. Allan, for you had your internships. That really helped you out. That was a great reform in France, that promoting internships. What kind of solutions do you imagine could be put in place? I fully agree with what was said before, but I think that this idea of making people aware, not only at a too young an age, but as soon as possible, to have classes on civil education, on climate issues. Because with everything that is going on at the moment, the more you make people aware as a very young age, the better they will be in the future. And internships helped me a lot because it taught me an experience even before I graduated to be an engineer. Throughout my high school, I could work from time to time, and so I could compare what I learned in theory and how can I apply to the space sector. And the reform of the education that was made in France has been very good because it allowed the young people to test out the job market while they're still at school. And so it gives you also a different vision of school, and it helps you be more performant. I arrived in LA. I wasn't lost because I had really discovered the world of work, and I could get acclimated very easily. Pascal, you believe that companies have a very important role to play and that they should even do more tomorrow for the youth? Yes, they have a fundamental role to play, and the good news is that companies need to recruit young people, and the recruitment topic is a priority topic for most of companies, and it's hard for them to hire talents, retain them, and keep them over time. And the young people want to get committed into their jobs. So you say the young people want to get hired and companies want to hire. So what's the problem? There's a problem with the connection between both, and we need to to recreate this connection between young people and the companies. On the company side, it means that we have to make efforts. We need to stretch ourselves a bit and go out and get the young people where we see that they're ready to get involved. It means that goes through training, through internships, through as an entrepreneur. Also, we need to make the bridges, build the bridges. With Wavestone, we're partnering for 5 years with an incredible initiative. It's called the Institute George Charpak, and it's about getting some young people who reached the level of the baccalaureate but didn't perform very well. They don't have very good grades, but yet we believe they have potential, so they are identified. And thanks to this institute and thanks to an education program, we can make them reach a level of a BA, and some of them eventually even continue to engineering school. So we can help build those bridges, because the world of companies is very keen to have to recruit those young people. It doesn't stop here. We have to know how to get them involved in our projects. The typology of the Sherpa is over. Young people need to be a real stakeholder of the company. They cannot stay for 10 years in the same job executing exactly what they're being asked to do. They need to be part of it. So we need to change our companies and to be more. Doesn't mean that we're going to do everything they want, but ask the right questions with the newcomers, the young newcomers who are going to be part of the company on the long term, to work with them to what are going to be the solutions, what is the project of the company tomorrow. And then we need to be exemplary. We need to engage the young in a project that they like, that appeals to them, and that is aligned with the major issues that young people are concerned about: environment, citizenship, to be citizen of the company. And to do all that, we need to be set ourselves in long time, long horizon. And some companies, family-owned, companies that were founded by entrepreneurs that I represent, could have a long-term vision and not look just in the next 2 or 3 years, to build a project that will maybe succeed in 10 years and get on board the young people who are anxious to build a desirable future for the young. Yourself at Wavestone, you host about 1,000 young people every year. Yes, absolutely. And I like to think that we succeed, part of what I'm mentioning, and Wavestone is more than a job for the people who work with us. So I thank them every day, and actually the room is full of people who work at Wavestone. So this is a good transition for me to turn to the room. If you have any questions, we're going to move on to the Q&A session in a few minutes. Maybe a last round of the table to talk about this eco-anxiety that you mentioned, Stéphane. You didn't really develop it. What is it? Something that makes it even harder today? Your way of getting part of the society and imagining the future, Said? I think that it's also stimulated by the capacity to project yourself in the future. It's very simple. If you don't know what's going to happen, it creates a feeling of fear, anxiety. And I wanted to, I'm lucky because I'm part of the Social and Economic Council, and we produced a report a few weeks ago on employment and the phenomenon of ecological transition, environment transition. And we realized that where there are economic opportunities, because we invest more and more in companies, in public organizations, there's a change, there's a shift that is taking place. And these are economic opportunities that need to be promoted as much as possible for those underprivileged young people. the more we'll have promotion campaigns on the green jobs of tomorrow, we'll be capable to project ourselves in the future, and we'll be able to allow those who are underprivileged to get a better training, to know better, to know more about those opportunities, and to maybe build careers that will be very interesting. So we would solve this way two phenomena at the same time. So I send you back to the Social Economic Council that is very well built, very well positioned on this question. Allan, is it difficult for you to see yourself in the future with this? In my domain, in the engineering department, we feel it. There's this, what you call this eco-anxiety phenomenon. Young people are more and more concerned about the climate issues. But in my field, in an engineering school, we had a lot of classes that touched upon it, classes on environment, the engines of tomorrow, for example. And I think we have a role to play, the institutions have a role to play in this, to help and to support the young people to transition. And we have a future in this field, and we have to realize it. But we also have to have classes and training programs that are linked to it. So I think that's a good thing, because it gives us also a more futuristic vision of what we're doing. Yes, I think we can definitely feel this eco-anxiety. Pascal, Shirmai, this is your day-to-day job. So we hear, Pascal, that this generation, sometimes it's difficult to attract. It's simply a generation that is very ready to commit and to get involved. They just need to find meaning in what they do. And versus other generations that I've encountered, what was before, they really wanted to make a lot of money and to succeed, and now they're equally very excited, but about having a meaning in finding a meaning in what they do, and do something for the greater good. And there are a lot of young people who want to get involved in projects of environmental transition, and they're right. It's a topic that is going to explode. As a consulting firm, we see the new needs and the new jobs that are developed. And I'm sad for Allan, because it's really a dead end. If he had gone into environmental transition, he would be having much more options. No, we had many projects with green planes, fueled by hydrogen, which has a smaller carbon footprint, with Airbus. So I work on airplane engines as well. So the idea is to develop systems that are greener and greener. But in the aeronautics field, we're not always well regarded from that point of view. But like everybody else, we try to do our best. Shirmai, a word, and then and after that we'll open the floor to questions.
Yeah, so in addition to my work with the Commission, I also work in the field of climate finance. And unfortunately, a lot of the climate finance that are dedicated to youth right now is just non-existent, and it's currently not being tracked or mapped by funding agencies and development finance institutions. And so I feel very much in despair, because I just don't see the funding that needs to be there. And I think to add complexity to the issue, a lot of these funding opportunities for young people are one-off grants. So a lot of times when I have initiatives, or my peers have initiatives that they want to execute, there's no continuity because these grants are one-off. And then also, lastly, a lot of times, like especially as a low-income student, when I travel to these professional opportunities or excursions, a lot of the procedures that are involved require me to go through a reimbursement procedure, which is difficult because as a student, I do not yet have a steady stream of income. So, whenever I enter these opportunities and forums, I really try to tell people, okay, just a slight change. Instead of a reimbursement, could it be a bursary or a grant system? And so, yeah, I hope that maybe this is something that you can also take away from this session as well.
Thank you. Alors, est-ce que vous avez...
So do you have any questions to ask our speakers? I can see that there's a hand going up. Can you please introduce yourself? Karim, I work at L'Oral. I'm in human resources, and I wanted to come back to two things that you said. The first concerns loyalty. To be loyal, if you take rural youth or neighborhood youth, it's very difficult for them to get into contact with people who belong to the CAC 40. They're people who have been to big schools. They come from a background that is privileged, and they come from the best schools. So today they want to continue to reproduce inequalities. They're just recruiting people that are in the top 10 schools, business schools or engineering schools. Things are changing little by little. Yeah, things are changing a little bit. I think Pascal from Wavestone, yes, they're good. But if we look at other groups, it's still the top schools that are used for recruitment purposes. So young rural people, people from underprivileged neighborhoods are finding it difficult. So today we have to come out of this role model logic. People from different backgrounds, from difficult backgrounds, need to be given a boost because there are so few who manage because, you know, maybe there are 20 or so like the people we've got up there on the stage today. We need to have people from low-income neighborhoods because today we have a recruitment system, and I agree with you, Pascal. Recruitment is very important. At L'Oréal, we're not very good at things. We reproduce social inequalities because we recruit from these target top schools. Yes. You're very courageous. You're reflecting reality. There are two things here, two movements. You know, we've got movements that are reassuring. We have to go quickly, and so that's the technique used. And then there's a second movement, if you like, which is slower, but which is real, which is sincere, which involves committed policymakers or decision makers who look at the state of play, and we're faced with that. And I think the problem is that we're talking about flows, and people expect people to change quickly. But there are tools today. We can have access. No, all recruiters who are in the room, we have tools. We've got databases that are accessible free of charge so that you can identify different populations. We've done our bit. We've created mosaictalent.com as a database. And there's a search engine that will push out to you the right kind of CVs. So the tool is there, but you need to have the right vision and the wish to use it. Any other questions? And so wait for the microphone to come. Thank you. And then there's a question at the back. Please introduce yourself. Yes, hello, my name is Modérateur. I'm 18. I'm from Marseille, from the priority neighborhoods there. I'm a member of the youth delegation, and I'm focusing on equal opportunities. I have a question for you in the middle, and I'm going to ask it to you in English.
If for you consider that young people with demonstration and with her mobilization on climate subject have the same voice and the same power that decision who make on a commission like the G20 or the commission like you tell her. Thank you.
Just for
Excuse me, c'est marseillais, c'est pour ça.
It's because I come from Marseille. I'm sorry, I have an accent.
I would like to know if, for you, you consider that young people have the same power with her demonstration on the climate subject of the decision who makes on the commission like the G20 or all the commission who make by the chef d'État. Voilà.
Unfortunately, we're not there yet. And which is why I think it's important for me to come to these forums, to speak at these forums, because I personally do not feel comfortable or confident to speak in front of an audience, but I do it anyway because I feel like if this opportunity is presented to me and I don't speak, then who else will speak for people from also my background? But I would say a lot of times with youth inclusion, it's like a label, a title that you carry, but then when it comes to meaningful engagement, there's no substance, which is something that I was also mentioning earlier, that the inclusion of youth does not stop at access. So for example, I had a hard time in my undergraduate degree because I was given this scholarship to study in the United States, but nobody told me anything about, speaking the speaking the lingo that is required in a tertiary education, the etiquette that comes with writing an email, for example, or how do you do networking. Nobody told me any of that. And I had to navigate all of that myself because my parents didn't do it. My peers didn't do it. I didn't come from a background where people told me that that's what I need to do. And so it's very important to, build yourself that network. And I was fortunate enough to find a safe space in my undergraduate degree that built me this network, which is also why I said earlier that mentorship is so important. But I'm actually very glad to see a lot of non-young people in this in the audience today, because actually in the past when I speak at these panels with the theme of youth, a lot of times the people that turn up are youth themselves, which is great, but then the people who are actually making the decisions are not people like me. So I need more people like you guys here today to come to our panels, to come to our conversations, and to listen to us. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, thank you very much. Il y avait une question là.
Then there's another question. I haven't forgotten that there's a question at the back. Olivier Tison, thank you for everything you've said. I was a director of innovation for a big association in the south, in charge of integrating people who are suffering from a disability. This is a subject that we haven't talked about, but it should be taken up. People who are suffering from disability find it difficult to access schools and universities. And it's very difficult for them to be recruited. I think it's a subject that should also be approached, addressed, and that everybody here can act in this way. It's a good idea to think about France Travail Inclusion. Thank you very much for your remark. Let's take another question. I don't know whether you want to add anything with respect to that remark. Pascal? Well, obviously, it's a huge challenge, and we are really quite behind in the educational system and in the insertion system for these people in companies. So we've got a big mountain to climb yet. Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm a prof at a business school and have been for 10 years.
Bring Hong Kong to the people, because it's such an amazing city. But this one is about geography only. Moi, j'ai juste...
I don't have a question, but a remark. I'm a teacher. For 10 years, I've been hearing a lot of students in the business school saying, but I've always been told that I wouldn't be able to do 2 years of study or 3 years of study. And maybe I will put people's backs up, but I have the impression that the messages that some teachers pass on at middle school or secondary school do not capitalize on the value of young people enough. I won't say any more, but I'm always saying, yes, you can. You are able to do that as long as you want to. Yes, you are capable of doing it. You can do it. Second thing, my remark, I'm a baby boomer, Generation X, and I have a remark. I'm also a dad. I've got 2 young children. They're 20 and 25. I think that the baby boomers, the Generation Xers, are projecting onto our children our own anxieties and fears, our own apprehension, and that's not helping them. It's not helping them to behave in this way. With my children, I tried to do things differently. And this is what I say to young people today, and I've met quite a few. We are afraid for you. Perhaps you're not afraid, or maybe you have different fears. Give me your opinion on what you think about the fact that us as older people, we project our fears onto you. Thank you very much for your testimony and your question. Who would like to take that? Allan. Well, it's true. You know, this is what I experienced too. At secondary school, I wasn't necessarily supported with what I wanted to do. But in my case, well, I don't think they were doing this maliciously, as I've said. But there are different types of profiles among teachers. Some can support us right from the start and say, yes, just go for it. And others might be more reticent and less enthusiastic about encouraging us. It really depends on the profile of the teacher. But what's important for young people is to listen to what you want to do. It's good to have outside opinions, but you have to listen to what you want to do. This is what you say to your students, I believe. It's a very good message, and thank you for what you're doing. Thank you very much. Is there one last question? Because unfortunately time is ticking. Yes, you have a microphone coming, and then we'll listen to Stéphane's conclusion. Yes, hello. My name is Allan. I'm a student in political science. Today I have a question for Chang, who's in the middle. Chang.
In political institutions and multilateral institutions as well, and the importance of giving a voice to the youth that seems to be misunderstood or that we do not hear us enough. However, it seems like a part of the youth today seems rather desperate to head toward the political institutions and multilateral organizations. So what can you say to the part of the youth that does not believe anymore in those multilateral institutions to make things move today? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. And I believe that change doesn't have to happen from the top down, from like these multilateral political institutions. It could also happen from the bottom up. So one thing that I was involved with during my undergraduate career as a first-generation low-income student was that I was very frustrated with I was part of a residential college when I was in my undergraduate degree, and the meal plan that was given to me as someone on financial aid was actually not enough to sustain 3 meals a day. And my school, while they had a resource center that provided snacks, they're not actually meals. And so what I did was that I just kind of took matters in my own hands. I started what I call a community fridge initiative, where I divert food that would otherwise be unsold from nearby farms, put it in the fridge, and then encourage other low-income students to also use those produce to cook themselves their own meals. And so it addressed two things at once. It address diverting food waste, so sustainability, but also the food justice, and also to increase access for like low-income students. So I believe, you know, I've kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. I do agree that sometimes being in these multilateral spaces can be very frustrating, but it's all up to you how you want to take matters into your own hands, and it doesn't have to be impactful on an international level. I think on a community level, it can just be as impactful.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Stéphane, donc
Stéphane, so we're coming to the end of this session. Things go very quickly, so you have the floor for the conclusion. So very quickly, I was really pleasantly surprised by this panel discussion. We've talked about some fundamental things such as aspirations, motivation, strengthening young people's resilience. These are all things that are essential. And, you know, the family unities are not always enough to help young people. You need networks. You need models. You need to develop your imagination. You need to encourage motivation and aspirations. And that all needs networks. It needs companies to be involved and local authorities maybe, but also networks of young people. So it's this group that is very important. It's the collective that needs to be strengthened. I think we should have a parallel session on the role of schools, especially in France, because as you know, we're very much focused on fundamental know-how, but not very much focused on the development of aspirations and imagination. And I think that's something that is missing in France. It's something that we have to change in France. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stéphane. So before we leave each other, a book is being signed at 5 o'clock in the FNAC space just behind the auditorium. It's called Economists Will Save the Planet by William Unvar. So if you want to buy the book and have it signed, it's just behind the auditorium. Thank you.